John Boylan, and welcome. Thank you. Tonight, we're going to talk about conversation and collaboration, and we'll get started. So, a little bit of background. I work in several areas around conversation, collaboration. For the past few months, I've been coordinating Studio 99, the Microsoft research project that, quote, provides a space for art and science to interact. I'm also working on 92, which promises to be a huge art and science event in October 2016. You will hear more about it as we get closer. And I run a discussion series at Vermilion. The first conversation this fall on September 22nd will be about the intersections between art and technology and fabrication and design. The October conversation on October 20th is about creating outlaw space, a big subject these days, I think. Let's start by thinking a moment about what we're all doing here. Obviously, we're working in service to Shunpike's vision, envisioning, as they say, a community where independent artists and arts groups thrive creatively and economically. That's from the website. Tonight, we're looking at cross-pollination, and to quote the poster, the ways in which artists are connecting across groups and sectors to nurture an ecosystem. And we're looking at what it takes to create a hive mind, and in that, a sense that a well-made whole acting in concert is more powerful than its parts acting independently. At their most fundamental, those connections across groups and sectors need to be driven by the best sorts of communication and collaboration that we can muster. Sure, communication and collaboration must be practical, effective, and useful, but they must also be compassionate and able to foster imagination, creativity, and insightful thinking. Some of that simply is about the rules of good behavior in having a conversation, as in actively listening to what the other person has to say, as opposed to crafting that witty response so that one can be ready when the other person stops talking. And then there's that basic rule, regularly asking oneself, is what I'm about to say important and germane to this conversation, or is it me just talking for the sake of talking? But there's something as important, and maybe more so, an awareness of the power dynamics of people in conversation. As many of you know, I've been creating conversations among groups of people, some large groups of people, for many years now. In the business world, these conversations among groups of people are known as meetings. And in that same world, meetings can be among the most painful thing that people do. What becomes apparent in most group conversations is the ways in which some people are privileged and others are not, and the ways in which some people privilege themselves. In group conversations, power relationships become evident and vulnerabilities are writ large, especially in configurations where people are pressured to converse. One single example, have you ever sat in one of those large facilitated conversation circles with the person across from you 30 feet away? There's something discomforting and unnatural about that. Who talks with someone 30 feet away? Or have you sat down in an important meeting only to realize that the key players in the conversation are at the other end of the table, and that's where the conversation is really happening? In smaller conversational groups, vulnerabilities tend to matter more, and the more subtle power structures tend to rise to the fore. I'm going to go back. That's why I often want to stand up and run when I'm at a workshop and hear, now we'll break into small groups. In those tiny conversations, all the careful structure and planning of the larger facilitated group conversation are abandoned. There are tricks, of course, to counter small groups dynamics, as in automatically making the youngest or newest member of the small group the leader of that group. Ultimately, though, I think good conversational dynamics, the core of collaboration, are most important when people are working across disciplines. One such area I've been working with lately is collaborations between artists and scientists. And so cross-disciplinary connections are key. I've been working toward those in my conversations for years. That importance is driven by the basic principle that just by being different, by thinking differently, by imagining differently, we tend to push each other out of our familiar ways of thinking. And most important, we tend to push each other to expand our often unseen and unstated rules for what is possible. As I look at collaborations and the conversations that drive them, I'm beginning to think that in this world, if we are to collaborate and create, we all need to live, to think, and to create, a little like Leonardo da Vinci. I'm not saying that we all need to be genius engineers and painters, but there is something incredibly valuable in crossing disciplines to the ability to create and the ability to collaborate. If we are to successfully communicate across disciplines, there is some value in making them our own, at least a little. The idea of a plumber or a carpenter who draws, and many do, or a musician who writes code, or an engineer who sculpts, all of those open up great new possibilities in imagination and in successful communication and collaboration. Each can become a Leonardo. Thank you. Here are a few of my links.